We're all in. Phil Morgan's supposed to be coming in. Did he get back to you? You sent him an email.
Great, welcome. I think we've got a very nearly full house today, so that's fantastic. It's great to see everyone. Is it an escape from the terrible weather? Is that what we've got going on? Welcome everyone. We'll start off with the usual apologies, etc. from Mike.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. We've got apologies from Dave Savage, Austin Knott and Councillor Susan Hobson. Are we going to tell them that Phil's coming now?
Yes, so just to let you know as well that Phil Mulligan, the Chief Executive of the National Park Authority, is planning at least to observe the meeting today. He's coming up from London this morning, so he's going to arrive when he arrives.
Sorry. And Simon Thompson, do you know? And we've got a member of the National Park who's also going to observe the meeting, Simon Thompson. He's not here yet, so he'll be expecting to come soon as well.
Next is minutes of the meeting of our last meeting. So first of all, any points of correction or clarification, anything anybody wanted to raise just technically in terms of the minute before we approve them as an accurate record? Are we happy to approve them as an accurate record? Anybody? No? Great, thank you very much. Thank you they were very comprehensive, so thank you very much for doing that. Thank you. So, matters arising that are not covered by the agenda. So just going through the minutes, we had a presentation from Jack Cornish and the Ramblers, which I know it's certainly led to lots of conversations and thoughts for me and others that I've spoken to. I guess I just wanted to remind everybody on that, as Mike said on the email, when we have presentations from people, we're not circulating the slides to members, but they're posted on the National Park website in the left section. So if you navigate to that, you can download Jack's slides. You can also download Martin's slides, and any papers or anything else that were there for the meeting are all there, which is a much better. Often we can't circulate slides because they're too big. They get knocked out by somebody's email system, if not the National Park. So that's the best way to get hold of papers and slides if you want to get them after a meeting. Martin's presentation on the role of a footpath secretary. Anybody anything to comment on or matters arising from there? Again, really interesting. Thank you, Martin, for doing that. And then we had Andy Farmer's presentation and our discussion around the National Park Authority approach to rights of way management following the organisational change, which Sue Fletcher also contributed to. Again, anything anybody wants to raise, questions around that? I'm sure it's something we'll continue to come back to as plans evolve. I think just from my perspective, I guess it would be good to minute a reminder that we'd like to be kept up to date with the progress on the Recreation Hub strategy, particularly because that's, I think, is where our previous Green Lanes work is supposed to be fitting in, and it's where a lot of the rights of way work will maybe go. So, I guess just a minute, making sure that we kind of keep abreast of what's happening on that. Jill's rights of way, we will come back to in a later item. Sue's access update will also come back to on a later item. Anything else anybody wants to raise under that? I think that was everything. Thank you. Okay.
Slight change to the agenda order, so Rebecca.
Yes, so in a slight change to the agenda order that you were given originally, we're going to move on to an update on the FIPL scheme, so that we could make sure that Rebecca was able to come and present to us. So, Rebecca, over to you. I think we've talked to us before, but introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are.
I think it's quite a long time ago, so it might have been the first year of FIPL. So I look after the FIPL programme for the National Park, for the Peak District National Park. This is a programme across all AONBs and national parks. It's part of the Agricultural Transition Programme. So this is DEFRA money that's given to all of the protected landscapes to divvy out to people, landowners and land managers, who wish to make a contribution to 4 themes. So it's climate, nature, people and place. There we go. So we got these 4 themes: climate, nature, people and place, and then 13 outcomes. And the really important ones for the lack of these 3 here, particularly the first 2. This is a condensed version of the words. So there are more opportunities for people, and that's about enjoying and accessing the countryside. And then there are more opportunities for more diverse audiences to enjoy and access the countryside. And then that 3rd one is around volunteering. I would say the vast majority of our applications and agreements actually hit more than one of these themes. Sometimes we have an access related one that just actually hits one. And I think it's more often the access ones that just hit the people thing and maybe nothing else. Just because of the nature of access projects, really. Can you come on to the next slide, please? So this is just a whistle-stop sort of summary of where we are. We have now approved 342 projects, which I think is pretty amazing. Pretty amazing amount of computer space and paperwork. So projects now that are under 10,000 are approved internally, so it's actually Sue Fletcher who signs those. Projects over 10,000 are approved by a panel, so it's a panel not dissimilar to you today. I think we're probably less formal. That's probably just, I don't know, because we've evolved. And the members here have actually been invited to attend, hopefully to sort of represent the interests of people and the interests of the National Park people in farming and protected landscape. So we've got Natural England, we've got Derbyshire Wildlife Trust representing all of the NGOs. It's important when you look at this list, people are representing groups a bit like you are. The NFU, CLA, there's a member from the National Park Authority, there's a nominated officer who's Sue Fletcher, there's then a representative from the South West Peak, which is John Stone, who acts as the chair. We've then got a White Peak farmer representative and a Dark Peak farmer representative. And we've got a pretty substantial budget. And the scary thing about this budget is this next year, because the programme ends on the 31st of March, everybody loses their job, it comes to an end. So that means that we have to get all the money out of the door. It's not only completing the projects, it's getting all the money out of the door, wrapping up the programme. So we're actually advising people, applicants now, that projects need, the capital works ideally need to be finished by the 31st of December 2024. So we've got a wacky budget and only 9 months to deliver it in. Pretty scary prospect. In terms of people supporting the programme, there are 4 FIPL advisors, including me, so that's the equivalent of 3 full-time equivalent jobs. And we've recently appointed another administrator, so there's the equivalent of 1.6 people administering the programme. You can imagine a DEFRA programme really monitoring intensive, an absolutely enormous Excel spreadsheet. And they change it year on year, so we're now dealing with 3 Excel spreadsheets, all of which are linked together in some sort of obscure fashion. Typical DEFRA admin. And then there's support from across the authority, some of which is supported financially. So as well as this delivery budget, we've got an advice and guidance budget and an admin budget, and we are using some of that advice and guidance budget to support people to support us. But actually, most of the support we have from across the authority is given. So the support that we have from Mike and from Sue and from Richard is given support. And the support we have for most of the cultural heritage team is stuff that they give us as part of their role in delivering national park objectives. Can you give me the next slide? So, this map shows where all our projects are, and this sort of pinkish bit here is the White Peak, the Dark Peak, and then the Southwest Peak. We've been showing this to the panel since the very beginning of FIPL, and that distribution hasn't changed, which I think is quite consoling, really. That I would say, given the fact that this isn't very many landowners up here, that's a pretty fair distribution across the national park. And then in terms of those 4 themes, that bar chart reflects what people tick on their application form as to what theme they're addressing. And interestingly, it's the people one that falls back. And that distribution again has been much the same all the way through the FIPL programme and is much the same for all protected landscapes. And consequently, I think everybody is looking at how can we address that imbalance here. You've got to remember, have we lost it completely? Oh, there it's back again. That this is what people tick. DEFRA actually asks us, after the project's finished, to re-go through that process. So we then write down what we think this project has achieved. So there will be some difference there. And obviously this talks about the number of projects. It's not about the amount of money or about the benefit. It's just about how these projects hit those things. Can we have the next one, please?
It's not working.
Because I knew I was coming to talk to you today, I went through, well, I didn't, I asked somebody, I asked Beverly to go through and pull out all the access projects. We may have missed 1 or 2, but I think this is more or less all of them. And this includes 3 projects, well, 4 projects really, that were approved at the panel on Monday. And I pulled this out because I just thought, for my benefit and from yours, I think the most interesting thing here is that there's 19 private farmers who are delivering some form of access upgrade or new access on the farms. And I would suggest that that's a pretty good outcome. So there's 34 access projects now, and 19 of those are being delivered by private farmers. I've listed the ones on non-private land, and a huge range. A huge range. I've pulled out Tisterton Estate. Obviously Tisterton Estate, Worler Hall Farm, all of these people are actually private landowners, but they're not like a private farmer. So, for that, one of you was at the panel, at least one of you was at the panel on Monday. The 4 that were approved at the panel on Monday was Worler Hall Farm, Creswick Bridge, and then 2 new permissive bridleways on privately owned land. The Worler Hall Farm was a bit of an outlier for us. You've got to remember this is about farming in protected landscapes. We decided at our panel that we would look at any project within the national park, any project within one of the 3 main national character areas. Then anything outside of that, there had to be a clear link to the national park or the national character area. Worler Hall Farm, a lot of you will know it. It sits on the fringe of Sheffield. It's not in the national park. It's not in the Dark Peak NCA. And whilst I was confident about the upgrades to the new permissive paths there, confident about the educational access that they wanted to do, we had a bit of soul searching over the actual funding for the improvements in the farmyard. Interestingly, all those improvements in the farmyard are about making the farm more accessible to disabled people. So that project was solely actually about people and how people use that countryside and how people use that little bit of countryside to get from Sheffield into the national park. The other 3 that were approved by the panel were Creswick Bridge, which most of you will have heard about. So this is the bridge that goes from Creswick Mill over to the Chatsworth owned land on the other side of the valley, and the National Park Authority is taking over the management responsibility for that bridge, and with a multitude of different sources of funding are going to replace that bridge. The main funding source being farming and protected landscapes. And then the other two are our first two new permissive bridleways. We've still got detail to work out there. So there's two, one on Longston Edge, the other one at Woodale. The one on Longston Edge, it's really important that we make sure that we don't invite the motorbikes in. And we need to collectively decide how we put obstructions in place to ensure the motorbikes don't get in, but maintain access for walkers and allow access for horse riders. The other one in Woodale is also a bit problematic for just admin reasons really, but we will get there, and they've been approved and the farmers are supportive. That's what's great. The next one please. Oh sorry, whilst I'm here, I think this is interesting, and it comes back to something that I was talking to Jez about earlier. There's only 7 projects worth over £10,000. Most access projects are either really cheap, so a little bit of access, changing styles to gates, or they're really expensive like Cresbrook Bridge. There's very little in the middle. Farming and protected landscapes depends on landowners making an application to us, landowners or representatives of landowners. And that means that landowners have to bankroll that project and then claim the money back from us. So it's interesting that only one of those more expensive projects is delivered by a farmer or land manager. And that's one of the challenges for us, is this getting farmers and landowners to be prepared to bankroll a project. Which can be quite significant for people who are, hovering at the naught on their bank balance. The other interesting thing is this 22 projects in the White Peak, 8 in the Dark Peak, 4 in the Southwest Peak. I think you could expect that, in that most of our footpaths are probably in the White Peak. Not quite sure why it's so skewed to the White Peak. Just don't really know. Okay, the next one please. So I then looked at sort of pulling them out into these two categories really, upgrades to existing rights of way and then new permissive access. One quite inventive solution to safety, to keeping cows separate from people on a footpath in Great Longston. Lots of small projects where we've changed styles to gates. A few mostly bigger projects that have involved surfacing of that right of way. So I think the two that spring to mind, I suppose, are Coleside's connections with the National Trust, which was done the very first year of FIPL, and then the surfacing of Doctors Gate going up from Glossop to Bleaklow, which happened last year. And then I guess the most, I suppose, exciting thing is this new permissive access. And we've now got to 15 footpaths. Not quite sure how that happened. When I last spoke to people, it was 10. So it's always creeping up, which is great. These 2 bridleways that were approved on Monday. And then a little area of open access around Millinglow Lime Kiln. So the lime kiln was restored very expensively using FIPL funding last year. And the farmer volunteered an area of open access around it. It's accessed off the trail just south of our car park at Millinglow. And this shows the challenges for farmers. We've had DCC questioning the health and safety liability of that lime kiln, both for us because it's accessed from the trail and for the farmer. And actually, as a result of that, he's taken away the picnic tables that he put there without any funding from us. Because people are questioning this, inviting people in to a place that could be considered unsafe. A big drop off the top of the lime kiln. And I think it's really important just to think about, this open access or new permissive access. What does this mean for landowners' liability? And especially when you're Joe Blogg's farmer. So in terms of the funding, we fund or can fund capital works up to 100%. Obviously with the bigger projects we're always looking for match funding or funding from the applicant. And then we make an annual payment, a revenue payment to support that open access. And these are these payments here. Now some of you will be aware that DEFRA announced in January that they were going to introduce revenue payments for new permissive access from the summer, an indeterminate time in the summer. And those are the payment rates. We haven't got any specifications for what that will mean. And interestingly, they don't have this base payment. So this is the sort of sweetener for FIPL. You're just given £350 a year. That's going to go, and I imagine that's just because the admin of that is problematic at a national scale. So they've increased the meterage or hectarage payment, but got rid of this base payment. We've got no more information than that, but I imagine it will operate very much like FIPL does. Whether it needs a recommendation, I don't know, from recommendation from an access specialist, and certainly that's what we've looked at here, is making sure that what people are doing, we hope there is a demand, and we're sort of thinking about that in terms of recommendation from one of our access specialists here, or it being very obvious on the ground. The next one, and this is the last one. Some nice pictures of stuff we've done. So Wolfscott Hill, National Trust owned, that's happening now, I hope. Well, it's been approved. Sheen Hill, one of Mike's.
Been yet?
You haven't been yet? It is great. It's absolutely great. This is Doctor's Gate in as it was happening. I don't know if anybody's been there since that's happened. It's one of the sites that people have called the Bog of Doom. I know there are several bogs of doom, and this really was a bog of doom. This is the bridleway through Longston Edge. And then this is the access up on Sough Top. That is another absolutely superb route. So from the closed pub, it's the Waterloo pub, isn't it? And goes up onto Sough Top and the back of what I call Tangleton Edge. And this route up here is just stunning. And then you get up onto the top and you've got this amazing vista. And the farmers embraced it. They love it. They talk about it. They've tried to encourage the school to get there, only the landowner next door won't let the school go across his bit. But great. And then this one, I can't remember what this one is. Oh, Accessible Island, another National Trust. Big project down in the south of the park at Island. And we're expecting phase 2 in. Which is great. That's me.
Amazing. Thank you, Rebecca. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Claire, then Craig, then Martin.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That was absolutely cracking. It's a brilliant sounding project, and thanks for breaking it down so well. So I've just got a quick question about how do you manage the governance of these projects? Do you get people to kind of self-report about the standard of work they've been done and have they spent all the money, or do you have the resource to send somebody out and actually kind of keep audit that stuff?
In an ideal world, we'll go out to every project after it's done. In all the bigger projects, we'll go out. As part of the agreement, we're really clear over what we need in order to pay out the money. And in a lot of the sort of smaller ones, it'll be photos or measurements. If it's contractor work, we require receipted invoices. So it's fairly robust. I would hope that by the end of March 2025, we have been to every one. And all the bigger, more complicated ones we're going to before we pay. And I guess that's why there's quite a lot of people. You could say that this is well-resourced in terms of people. We'd say it's really under-resourced. But I think if Powers that Be looked at it, they'd say, come on, you've got 3 full-time equivalents, just get on with it. But yeah, we don't get to everyone before we pay, but we need evidence in order to pay.
Sounds like you're doing everything you can with doing so.
Yeah.
That's cracking.
Thank you.
And Craig,
Bit of an offer and then a question.
can you press your thank you.
Yeah, bit of an offer and a question. So the offer is it'd be really good to do some comms, wouldn't it? I'm sure you'll want to do like a breadth of projects across farmers as well as organisations like the National Trust, but definitely keen to sort of celebrate some of the work that's been funded.
So we do some. So some of the bigger projects we've put out a press release when it's happened. So press releases went out for Doctors Gate.
Yeah.
The smaller ones, yes, we haven't, and perhaps there is room to do a sort of access-focused something about FIPL, and maybe now's the time. I've probably given you more information than I would want to give the public, although they could find it out.
Yeah.
And do we really want to be shouting about a new bridleway on Wolston Edge to the public? I think some of the details of some of these sites, it's better that they're promoted, for example, within the British Tour Society rather than shouted from the rooftops, just because of potential abuse of some of the routes. So I do think we need to think about it. Stuff that National Trust has done, you know, anybody's welcome, aren't they? And that's different. I just want to be careful about some of them. That's all. Yeah, but it's a good offer, and maybe we do need to think about, you know, what happens after phase 2 of Accessible Island, and that would be a really good time, wouldn't it, to do something that celebrated all these bigger, really universally acceptable projects that have been funded.
Yeah, all right. No, I just think it's wonderful. You know, that programme, you know, of over £5 million of investment into the Peak District is something to be celebrated. But I appreciate there'll be some of the projects inevitably just draw in, you know, sort of noise from some people. My other question was around, is DEFRA definitely said this is it for FIPL? Because I've heard a few suggestions like the Nature for Climate funding might come about again this year. They might call it something different. But I'm just wondering if there's anything
at
around
the moment, yes, there's noises. At the moment, FIPL's ending at the end of March 2025. Yeah. And, you know, as we've moved through the FIPL programme, remembering that this is supposed to be part of the transition, more and more of the things that we fund have become accessible through the national scheme. So, you know, these access revenue payments and that access infrastructure will become available through ELMS in some way or other this summer. And we can only fund stuff that isn't fundable through national schemes, or there's a really good justification for why it should be funded at a local scale. Yeah. So, and that's just one example, you know, the hedge planting that we could fund in year 1, nearly all of that is now available through national schemes. Yeah. And more things are becoming available, and that's how it should be. You know, this was meant to bridge that gap. So there won't be the same need by March 2025. That's not to say that having a scheme that operates at a local level isn't valuable. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. We're expecting it to end.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Martin.
Rebecca, thanks very much. That's comprehensive and great to see all the access things. And the meeting I attended last year when the work on accessibility for Ilam Hall was really impressive. Just on the new permissive footpaths and bridleways, is there a time limit for how long they run for? And you partly answered the next question, because I was going to say, how are you going to promote and let people know about these? And with regards to the OS are very reluctant to put any permissive or concessionary paths on it, on their mapping. And I think I've got one to investigate where there is a concessionary path somewhere in Derbyshire Dales District, and someone's reported that it's blocked. If it's concessionary, we can't do anything at all about that. So, so how long will they run for, and how are we going to promote them, if we want to promote them?
So in terms of how long they run for, and this is the, I guess, bad news from your perspective, is they run until the end of March 2025. So it was seen as a way of encouraging farmers to have a go. And then obviously they could take that access infrastructure out, remove that permissive access. I don't think there's anybody who's taken on a new permissive footpath that won't continue with it. And obviously there's those payments available now that will hopefully mean that they can continue with it and get rewarded for continuing with it. But yes, at the moment they all end at the end of March 2025. And the permissive bridleways in particular will be quite expensive in terms of infrastructure. And obviously we're putting that infrastructure in place actually just for 1 year. With the permissive bridleways, one of the landowners, tenants, is clear that this is a trial. If it doesn't work, it will go. But I think we need to see that as actually quite a helpful thing, isn't it? It's giving people the opportunity to try, and if it doesn't work for them or for people, it can go. I can't remember what the other part of what you were saying was.
How do people know about it?
So, we're putting, we used actually a bit of local access fund to begin with, just to buy some little clip frames. We've now funded them through FIPL. We're putting little clip frames with a map at the start and end of every route. Sue Smith has put them all on our website. And we have promoted them at local meetings. We're expecting that we will promote the permissive bridleways through the British Horse Society, for example. So there is an element of promotion. Yes, they're not mapped on the Ordnance Survey. And for that reason, I think the use of them actually started off fairly slow, but is growing. So, you know, the one to South Top, people in Tannington are getting used to that being there, appreciating that it's there and using it more and more. And I think the same goes for the one at Minninglow and probably for Sheen Hill. So, yeah, we're not promoting it on Ordnance Survey. We're doing our best to promote them, you know, at a local level.
Thank you. Charlotte.
I'm sorry, just an observation. You said that there was only one of the larger access projects that was funded by, which was carried out by a farmer. I wondered what your thoughts were really on, I know from the work we did at Thor's Cave and Monsaldale that there was a lot of kind of additional cost to make that happen, which was met by us. So kind of planning, archaeology, construction environment management plan, all of which cost quite a bit of money, which we weren't able to recover through FIPL, which was fine. We were committed to doing that. And that's one thing for, say, us or the trust, but for farmers, that's another kind of hurdle, not only to kind of fund it up front, but also just to actually have to swallow that cost. Is there any way that you know...
We could do it in 2 phases. So we could do it as a design phase and then a delivery phase. With Doctor's Gate, which was the big one, we put the time into it here to make that happen. So one of our rangers actually put together the design, as it were. So it was really heavily supported by our ranger team. And because that one didn't need planning permission, it wasn't as complex as the ones that need planning permission. We are talking to Sheffield City Council, one of their tenants, about upgrade to a route that requires planning permission. And again, we're putting in as much support as we can, but yeah, it's a huge amount of work, and I'm just conscious that I'm not putting in as much as I should be to get that one off the ground.
You're hugely supportive, and you were in the, your team were in the design of that, but it's the planning fees, isn't it, and all that kind of thing, and it's just a shame that there's not a mechanism to help kind of support that in those cases where that's kind of the final hurdle that might.
Yeah, and it's useful to say that we cannot fund the planning application fee, so we could fund the design phase, and actually we helped, didn't we, here with the design phase for Thor's Cave. so we can help with that design. We cannot fund the planning application fee. The National Trust have put a huge amount of work into Ireland. Absolutely mammoth amount of work has gone into the planning for accessible Ireland. All at their own cost. Yeah. And so it is difficult for private landowners. Sorry?
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the acknowledgement. It was a
Oh,
lot.
huge amount. I mean, it's really obvious. Yeah, really obvious.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that, actually, which is one of the things I think that's really made people successful, particularly on the access side, is the fact that you guys have been, we know you've gone out and done proactive stuff, and I'm sure the Ranger team have as well, to say to farmers, apply, we want you to come in. With the new scheme being part of ELMS and a national programme, I get the sense we're going to maybe lose that maybe funded support, and I guess, do you see, will that continue? Will you still be, will that continue? Will that support still be there for farmers to, I guess, take the risk and go for the money?
So, at the moment, the National Park is running one of these DEFRA tested trials, which is looking at the opportunities, benefits, disbenefits of having a local convener. They call it a local convener for national schemes. And obviously that would get over one of the issues with that. You know, if there were local people in the Peak District, whoever employed them, that would obviously help, wouldn't it, in terms of somebody local there who understands the landscape being there to talk to farmers and landowners. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the reason this has been a success is that we've had those relationships with farmers and we've identified routes. We've identified routes and we've gone out and been proactive. And I would say with the access projects, with the exception of one or two of the farmers, it's been because we've been proactive.
And I think that's an incredibly valuable role in the park, is having, for the authority to actually be able to take that strategic view of the whole park and say, we're going to try and encourage this farmer to go for that money, even if it's not money administered by you guys, to actually provide that guidance and direction and support. Thank you. You guys have done an amazing job. It's really good to see. So thank you very much. And I think that leads quite nicely into our next section, which is our kind of theme for today, looking at land management and landowners' perspectives on access. And a couple of people who've actually been recipients of this FIPL money are going to be talking as well. So it'll be interesting to see the kind of connections there. So we have Charlotte from Chatsworth, who's going to talk to us about the work they've been doing, and then Charlotte, the other Charlotte, is going to talk. You don't have to be called Charlotte to speak in this section. Is going to talk about the kind of perspective from farmers and as land managers, and Joe's here as well, and I'm sure you'll have things to contribute on that too. And then Craig is going to talk from the National Trust perspective as well. So yeah.
So good morning. I've been asked to come talk to you this morning about the challenges and opportunities of public access from a landowner's point of view. So I work as the Deputy Estates Manager for the Devonshire Group based in Derbyshire at Chatsworth. I'm a surveyor and I've worked here for about 13 years. My role is really managing the kind of commercial, residential, agricultural property portfolio, rather than being involved in the kind of day-to-day visitor business, but I've tried to kind of reflect both in my presentation. So if you ask me too many tricky questions about the visitor side, I might have to go back and come back to you with an answer. So I thought it's important to give you a bit of context to our ownership before we start. Certainly kind of unknown to me before I took the job, I thought that this area was Chatsworth. So all of the land shaded dark grey on that map is owned by the Devonshire Group in Derbyshire. It spreads beyond this core estate and covers about 35,000 acres. This blob here is Chatsworth. Down here to the south we've got Shottle. This is kind of between Belper and Ashbourne. That's predominant, it's all let and it's predominantly dairy farming. Our ownership here On the west is kind of Wetton, Hartington, Earl Sterndale, Buxton, that kind of area, all let, and mostly kind of sheep and beef farming there. On the east we've got our Scarcliffe and Staveley estates. These are our kind of urban fringe areas. We farm about 2,000 acres there in hand, arable farming, predominantly out that side. So outside of our core area, we've got ownership of some popular sites like Thor's Cave, Parkhouse Hill, Monsaldale, and then parts of Manifold Valley and Lathkildale. So kind of honeypot sites. Next slide, please. So this is the area that we call the core estate, and it encompasses the house and the park, the gardens and the woodland, and the surrounding agricultural land and villages. For orientation, this bit here is the house, this dark grey here. Got Beeley down here, Enza and Baslow just at the top. We farm about 5,000 acres in hand, including the moorland for beef and sheep, and the remainder of the land is let and forestry is managed in hand. What you can see on the plan in red are the public rights of way, and in green are concessionary routes. They total around 42 miles. 26% of the core estate is open access. There's 30 acres of water bodies and 26 miles of riverbank. The house and gardens attract 600,000 visitors a year, and that's just the people that pay to come through the door. There's free access to the park and Stanwood 365 days a year, and the total visitors, annual visitors to the estate is about 1 million. Our research suggests that 40% of those are free. They are big numbers of visitors and a lot of public access, and it offers lots of challenges and opportunities. Next slide, please. So Chatsworth was built to be enjoyed by visitors, and tours of the house started in 1949. So we have a long history of public access, and it remains a crucial consideration in all of our future plans. In the last 2 years, we've been involved in the development of the whole estate plan for the core estate. This sets out the aims and the ambitions of the estate for the next 20 years, including measuring our environmental, economic and cultural impact, how we intend to manage and develop the property and sites we own, and how we will contribute to the special qualities of the National Park. We produced the plan in collaboration with the National Park and with Derbyshire Dales, and I know that lots of the organisations represented here today also fed into that consultation. You can view the plan online at this, on this link, which we can circulate. It's a big document and it covers lots of topics, but today we're here to talk about access. Access is one of the key aims detailed in the plan, and as you can see on the slide, some of our objectives are to make new connections and remove barriers preventing access to Chatsworth, assist the National Park in delivering their vision for every child to spend a night under the stars, and work with partners to explore the creation of a cycle path linking Chatsworth with Monsell Trail. So, challenges. There's lots of those, and lots of which will be common to many of you here. A huge challenge for us is the management of the sites that are remote from Chatsworth. So if you remember that original plan, there's lots that are far away from our key team based at Chatsworth. And in those areas, we really rely on our relationships with tenants, with the National Park Rangers team, and organisations like Derbyshire Wildlife Trust. Conflict between user groups is a common challenge, and I've listed some on the slide. The huge visitor numbers are great opportunities, but inevitably can lead to conflict, and it can be a challenge, particularly for me, managing a team of people, to always make sure that my staff are safe when they might have to deal with that if it gets a bit aggressive. Much of our estate is farmed, and there are some challenges in managing public access in these areas. We have problems with the interaction of stock and people, and particularly dogs, and also the impact of litter, barbecues, camping on farming and wildlife. Within our ownership, there are several SSSIs, which I probably should have put on the map, with public access, and it can be a challenge to us to ensure that wildlife as a refuge and crucial habitats like ancient woodland and bird nesting sites are protected from the impacts of large visitor numbers. Maintenance costs are high, and particularly in the last few years, there's been a huge increase in damage to kind of paths and bridges, thanks to flooding and ageing infrastructure. And you may have seen the aftermath of those busy summer nights at Chatsworth on social media. The cost and the time related to clearing that is huge, and then is repeated for us in several locations that I mentioned earlier. Popular sites require car parking and or other ways to sustainably travel there, and that's a big challenge for us and everybody. Post-COVID particularly, we saw a huge increase in people accessing the countryside and a conflict with some of our communities, particularly in like some of those issues like car parking and traffic, and the lack of or temporary closure of facilities like toilets. Thankfully, it's abated for us a little, but it remains a challenge in small communities, and a good example of that is Wetton. Travelling there by public transport is almost impossible. Car parking is really limited. Finally, on this, liability. Rebecca talked about our liability earlier, and health and safety. It's the top of the list in every area of our business, and it's relevant to public access. It impacts the areas that are grazed and with what stock. Tree safety is particularly important in busy areas, and given the area geographically that we own, we've got a regular programme of monitoring and where necessary, securing mine shafts and mine workings. Next slide. So opportunities. Of course, despite all the challenges, public access is really crucial to what we do. It supports our core business, it supports the work that Chatsworth House Trust do and all of our other businesses. It also provides an opportunity to support all of our tenants. It supports tenanted businesses including hospitality and retail and accommodation, but also in the case of Wetton, which I mentioned a moment ago, the car parking issue has been helped a little by one of our tenant farmers opening one of his fields as a temporary car parking on busy weekends. And the level of public access is supporting a campsite diversification. We've a wide range of places, buildings and habitats that we share with visitors, and it's a huge opportunity to welcome a range of audiences. We host 15,000 educational visits a year. In 2022, over 580,000 people enjoyed free access to Radical Horizons. We take the opportunity to develop and install interpretation boards in locations where this will help visitors better understand what they're visiting and to tackle some of the conflicts I discussed earlier. Rebecca didn't mention it, but she did to me earlier that some interpretation in Monsaldale was approved yesterday under the FIPL panel, so that will be going in this spring. Improving access and encouraging responsible access is one opportunity we have. These are the pictures of, this was the best before and after a picture I could get. I should have taken more, typically, of Thor's Cave. That was partly funded by FIPL, and there is a phase 2 to come. So part of the objective of this project was to improve the access, but also, once phase 2 is done, we hope to designate an additional area of open access. And crucially, Thor's Cave is a SSSI site, and so these improvements were really important for protecting that habitat. We've worked with partner organisations to develop new access routes on our eastern estate near Bolsover, and another project we are exploring will enable access via a concessionary footpath to some archaeological features that are otherwise inaccessible. Visitor numbers and interest has helped to support the discovery and clearance of additional routes in Stanwood. So if you go, Stanwood is the wood behind the house, and if you go there, you should see a whole load of kind of new waymarked routes. Work is underway in our forestry department to investigate opportunities to open up new access in woodlands for walkers and cyclists. Public access and the challenges it presents has definitely brought lots of opportunities forward, particularly much better working partnerships. In the last few years, we've definitely worked more closely with the National Park, but also post-COVID with neighbours like the National Trust and also other organisations like police, fire and rescue, and crucially the local communities. And we just didn't have the same links before. I feel that that's only going to help us manage the challenges better going forward. We see our visitors as a great opportunity to gather information and engage them with wildlife and nature. We are exploring ways in which we can bring in citizen science to assist in the reporting of species. We've got a brilliant GIS team, and they are also exploring ways in which visitors can report issues and feedback using QR codes placed along key routes. And we've installed some fixed point photography locations so visitors can be part of monitoring the change in these big landscape projects like the large scale removal of ash. We of course have the opportunity to continue and improve facilities for wider audiences. There's lots of examples in the whole estate plan of where we hope to do that by providing more and better disabled facilities and removing barriers to other cultures visiting us. I think that pretty much sums it up from me. I hope that's given you a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the kind of stuff we've got going on.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Charlotte? I'll take some questions for Charlotte now and then also some more questions at the end when everyone has spoken. But yeah, any questions for Charlotte now and what she's talked about, what Chatsworth are doing? Ben and then Nick and then Martin.
Hello, Charlotte. You know what I'm going to ask, don't you?
I know what you're going to ask, yeah.
So I thought that was brilliant, and I think Chatsworth has to be applauded for the access that it gives. I think I tried to scribble down a comment you made around your ethos to make new connections and remove barriers preventing access to Chatsworth. You talked about education outreach and public engagement opportunities, making sure people can connect with nature. You talked about making partnerships and working with people to manage access. And I think you do that great for cyclists, walkers, horse riders, anybody who wants to enjoy the land on Chatsworth land is able to do so and help you achieve all those aims. The bit that doesn't comply with your philosophy is the bit that runs right through the middle, and that's the water. And the reason is, I imagine, is because it's preserved for those who pay for the right to fish, yet it is still a natural feature that people want to enjoy, want to learn about, engage with. So I guess that's my point, and what my question is, more broadly, and because I don't want to just pick on Chatsworth, although you may wish to answer for Chatsworth, what are the challenges from your perspective as a landowner that's preventing that ability to enable people to enjoy the blue bit that's right in the middle of our peak park? What are the challenges that you're finding that is stopping you allowing people from swimming or paddling through Chatsworth? Loads of notes on that one.
I mean, there are lots of water that people do enjoy in watercraft, but it's quite complex, and it is quite complex, and there is a conflict between the people who fish it, and we've talked about this on site, haven't we? And there are lots of ways in which we could explore, and will undoubtedly explore, how we could allow access. Our little stretch of the Derwent is part of a much bigger piece of water, and so it's something that I think probably needs to be explored with a group of landowners rather than just 4.5-ish miles in the middle that runs through our park. Yeah. it's on the agenda, I guess.
Let's make a partnership. In other words, create access to water and maybe make use of FIPL. And let's set an example for the rest of the peak part. There's an offer.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's all right. You knew it was
I was
coming,
expecting
didn't
it.
you? Thank you, Ben. It was Nick next, I think.
Hi, thanks, Charlotte. Very interesting stuff. You mentioned increasing, or what sounded like concessionary access for cyclists and hopefully others users it, that your plans are. Are those details of those routes in the whole estate plan that's published on the internet, or is there anywhere else then that I can find out about those?
I don't think that those routes are the those routes. There aren't kind of routes available to view at the moment. They are, certainly under discussion, and there's quite a lot of change going on in our forestry at the moment. So it may be that it's a few years in the development, but it's certainly kind of on the agenda.
So we can expect to see kind of published ideas at some point of
I hope so,
where,
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Martin?
Charlotte, thanks for that. I mean, great to see that. So the red and green lines, I was sort of vaguely aware of that, but they're almost like equal in terms of the access. My question is with the cycle path, which is you mentioned, going from Roseley. I mean, that's going to reduce people cycling. They're going to reduce the amount of traffic coming in. I live in Wirksworth. If I cycle into Chatsworth if the cycle path goes in, what I would like to do is I'd like to cycle in, take my pannier, and then go for a walk with a micro rucksack. What about cycle storage at Chatsworth for my pannier, not so much for the bike? And the other thing is, are you looking at cycle hire at Roseley for cycle hire from there? And the last one is, will the cycle path push through to Baslow?
I don't know the details of that. This is kind of outside of my area. I think the pannier storage is a good point. I mean, there is cycle storage there already. Pannier storage is a good idea and one that we should consider. I mean, as for kind of route details and cycle hire, I don't think we're that far down the line. You know, our whole estate plan covers a 20-year period, so it's just objectives for now. Aims for now.
Thank you. Any other questions or thoughts for Charlotte? No? Great. Thank you very much, Charlotte. Thank you. Charlotte?
It's from the sublime to the ridiculous, really. So, thank you so much, Charlotte. That was really informative and nice to see some of the imaginative ways that you're looking at of increasing access. So this is from a farmer's perspective. I am a farmer. I'm a tenant of the Haddon Estate and I farm about 50 acres in Bradford Dale near Yulgrave. I've got a flock of Balwynworth Fountain sheep, a herd of Dexter cattle, and I'm on the HLS for the regeneration of species rich hay meadows. Thank you. So this is Bradford Dale, and this shows how it fits into the rights of way network. So this, you can see the river flowing through. It comes that way from Middleton and onward and joins the Lathkill just in the corner of my farm. So that's the farmhouse. This footpath here runs through. It's a farm track, it's well surfaced and has for many years been promoted by the National Park as a family friendly access. We've got a disabled access gate at that point where it joins the bridleway, and Rainster Rock is a very much treasured climbing route. So in the summer we've got lots of people there, 2 or 3 groups will be climbing on the rock in an evening. The bridleway connects through onto the wider bridleway network and also connects up into the village. Then we have the footpath that runs across the top is through the fields, is used a lot by local families, people dog walking, and it's also popular with tourists as part of a wider route through to Middleton. I also farm this little field here and we've got 2 footpaths there. So although it's only a small patch of land, there is an awful lot of access and access opportunities there for people. Thank you. So the benefits. Farming is a business. Farming makes money, and our product is food. And that's what we want to do as farmers. Great Britain produces some of the finest produce in the world, and as we've heard with DEFRA, we are very much constrained over what we can do and how we report, so there's quite a lot of paperwork that goes into being a farmer. There's not very much money, and anybody that follows Mr. Clarkson will know that there's diddly squats, so we'll just, all of us have to look at diversification. Agritourism, come and stay on the farm, participate in what we're doing, hay making, lambing, that sort of thing. Lots of farms run a B&B. I used to have a livery yard, and it was very important at that time, the bridleway that connected into the wider network. People have caravan and campsites, some of these are permanent, some of these are pop-up to cover in the summer. There are open farm events, which give us an opportunity to engage with the public, to talk about what we do and get them to come and see us in action. Having rights of way across your land gives you an opportunity to talk with people, to explain what you're doing. I love it when people go, well, your sheep are a bit different, what are they? And we can then have a conversation about what we're doing, and I think that that's very important. It's important on two levels, that it's for education, but also farming is often quite a lonely occupation, and it is nice to engage with other people just to have a chat. It's an opportunity to share something that we're passionate about. We love what we do, that's why we do it. The farm gate sales, I have a small number of beasts that I send to slaughter every year. I'm in the fortunate position that I sell everything that I produce at the farm gate. And that's important for me to be able to talk to people about what I do. We're also very, very pleased that we can help in the mental and physical health benefits of people accessing the Rights of Way network. It's lovely to watch people be out there enjoying themselves in a breath of fresh air, taking in the scenery. That's what we like to do. And now the government's grants for the concession footpath and bridleway through Fipple, which Rebecca's talked to us about. The challenges. So I've broken it down into managing people, having livestock on rights of way, dogs, wildlife and signage. So we can do this one. So managing people, waymarks. If paths are well marked to show who is entitled to use them, where they can go, that will help us a lot, because then people will know they'll have confidence in their walking, and if we just then, they've gone a bit off the track, we can just say, excuse me, you can just, that will take you where you need to go, rather than just getting lost off somewhere in the field. So waymarking is really, really important. A lot of ways are marked where they leave the road, and then you're just left to wander. I went to Italy for my holiday this year, and wherever you went, every now and again, there was a white mark with a red line through it and the number of the path that you were on. So it kept you safe because you knew where you were going, and also it just marked the way through the land. Stiles and gates need to be easy to use. That's a requirement for us as landowners, that the infrastructure has to be maintained. If the paths are surfaces good, then people tend not to stray off them. If you end up with a puddle, you then end up with a huge wide path where people are walking around to avoid the puddle. So we need to make it easy for people to use the rights of way. We need to make it easy to do the right thing. If you go up to a gate, open it, push it shut, that's easy. I've got quite a lot of gates on my farm where you just have to lift it a bit because it's dropped on its hinges. It makes it harder for people to do the right thing. So we as farmers are trying to keep things in the right so that people can use it. We need to use body language when we confront, to avoid confrontation. If you go storming up and you're like, "Oi, you, get off!" it straight away puts people up. I will walk up, "Hello, I farm here, can I help you? You seem to have gone off the track a bit." So that helps. Wild camping, I've put wild camping, but wild camping covers all the things that people think they'd just like to do in the countryside. And to be honest, you can't blame them. People want to come out and have a night camping and camp somewhere that's special and just for them. They want to go with their family and they want to have a barbecue. I can have a barbecue in my garden or in one of my fields. I don't live in a high-rise in Sheffield where the opportunities for that are very small. So I understand why people want to do that. People park in gateways. They're off the road. People can get through, so I'm off, "No, you're blocking my gateway, so I can't get through." And this is a very difficult thing to manage, and we as farmers will spend quite a lot of time just trying to explain to people why they shouldn't be doing that. But I'm not really doing any harm, am I? Well, you're not supposed to, there are campsites, there are parking places. We don't really have barbecue sites, but I think that's something that maybe we should be looking at as places where people can safely go and have a barbecue. Litter. I see litter as a fluctuating problem. The path that has the most people on has the least amount of litter. The most amount of litter is around the base of a particular tree where groups of youths from the village congregate in the evening. And I don't blame them. They want somewhere to go. And they go and sit in the field with the cans of pop and the bags of crisps, and then they just tuck them neatly into the bowl of the tree, and then I go with a bag and pick them up the day after. So it is a fluctuating problem. Litter is a problem to our livestock, and it's also a problem to wildlife. It shouldn't be there. Gates left open, allowing stock to stray, self-explanatory. But if your gate works properly, there really is no excuse for anybody to leave a gate open. This one, please. Livestock and footpaths. There are my Dexters. They're on the Packhorse Bridge. This is the family-friendly trails. That one's standing on there. Some of them have got horns. I am confident that those animals are quiet. They were born and raised there. They know the volume of people. They work well around them. I brought in some Aberdeen Angus, and they were an absolute nightmare because they hadn't grown up there. They didn't know what was going on. They were young stock. They were apt to chase people and dogs, and they just had to go because they didn't fit in. Having a herd of cows that have grown up there, running them mainly as a herd where you've got adults and children, and we all know that if you let children go off on their own, they'll behave in a certain way, and if there are adults around, they behave in a different way, and that's just the same for cattle. Dogs. My dog doesn't chase sheep. I often get told when I confront somebody whose dog is running through my sheep field, I point out that my sheep don't know that. A local chap was training his dog. It was a beautiful dog, it was perfectly under control, but he was throwing for a ball for it in the sheep field. And I said to him, "Look, you can't do that. It's a bad example. People will come and do this as well. But if you look at my sheep, normally I would expect them to be strewn out across the hillside grazing. They're all together and in a little group because your dog running about in their field is making them anxious." Sheep worrying. That has a whole slide for itself, please, Mike. Can we? So, chasing by dogs can do serious damage to sheep. The stress can cause sheep to die or to abort their lambs. there's been something recently in the paper about ewes and lambs that were killed. 45 of them were killed by dogs chasing them overnight. It's distressing. You know, we care for our livestock, and to come and find that, and you don't know what the trauma they've all gone through. Derbyshire Constabulary take the matter very seriously and will record every incident and prosecute wherever possible. Generally, you find the evidence, you don't find the culprit. But I had a very serious incident of sheep worrying. In the summer months, I check my sheep in the morning and then I check them in the late afternoon just to make sure everything's okay as the visitor numbers start to die down. And there was a sheep just about 4 metres from the footpath that didn't move when I walked up to it with the dog. So I took the dog home and went and picked up my ranger to go and pick up the sheep. It didn't move. It was still alive, picked it up, took it back, phoned the vet and arranged to meet them at the vet surgery, transferred it into my Land Rover and took it down there. When we examined the sheep, it was obvious that it had been attacked by a dog. There was a bite mark just above its tail, which was where it had first attached itself to the sheep. There were then 3 further marks up its back until it reached the shoulder. At the midpoint of the sheep's shoulder, it had actually got hold of the skin and had pulled back and had completely degloved the sheep's shoulder. Those were the extent of its injuries. I believe somebody knew that that had happened because nothing else happened. There were no other sheep involved. The rest were just quietly grazing. The vet said it was the worst incident he had ever seen. I reported it and got an incident number, and that was followed up by a sergeant who said, you should report everything. We record it, we look for a pattern. There is no way that we will be able to find out what dog did that, but it is recorded, and if you see anything like that, you should report it to the police because it is part of the statistic. What upset me the most was that that animal had been left, and we estimate that it had been there for about 8 or 9 hours, which was between my walking through. Knock on any door and say, who's the farmer? Go to the pub, go to the village shop. Just find somebody that will go and see what's happened. I'm a pragmatist. I've owned dogs for 40 years. I've only had one that I was ever prepared to walk off lead. These things happen. Accidents happen. But when it's happened, take ownership of it and deal with it. So, it's frightening to sight to witness. It's an incident of sheep worrying in the Dale. It was on a bank holiday weekend, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There were a lot of people around, and a lot of people saw a couple of Rottweilers chasing my sheep. Somebody let it out earlier in the day. It had never been there. These people walk through regularly. I've never seen livestock on that side. No, you have to be prepared that at any moment you can meet something that's unexpected. The NFU mutual insurance data shows that the cost of dog attacks rose to 1.8 million in 2022. Out of 1,100 dog owners, 64 admit their dogs chase animals, 46 believe their dog was incapable of injuring or killing stock, 65% of owners let their dogs off lead in the countryside, and 39% admit their pets don't always come back when called. I think that speaks for itself. Poo and bags. No, it is. No, it goes forward.
Oh,
It's this. You've got Bob twice. It's lovely. Poo and bags. Well, poo's unpleasant. It has diseases that contains parasites which will infect livestock. We've all seen bags hanging in trees, tucked into the side of the wall, left by a gate post. I don't know who people think are going to come along and collect them up. So the message there is bag it and bin it, or take it home with you. Other dogs. Some dogs don't like other dogs. When you're walking your dog and another dog comes bounding up, it can lead to a fight. People don't like dogs, and they can come, they are a nuisance. They should be under close control. That's what the Countryside Code says. And close control means it's there by you as if it was on a lead. Disturbing wildlife. That you don't have to chase something for it to be disturbed. As I've said with the sheep, just the physical presence of loose dogs will be upsetting for wildlife. Contract dog walkers. This is somebody who's earning a living by walking along the rights of way across my land. I've seen people with about 8 dogs. I'm not sure how they can have control. There was a horrific incident last year where a dog walker was actually killed by the pack of dogs that she was walking, and then those loose dogs chased some horse riders. I just raise it. I have no comment. Wildlife. Stand back and enjoy. Just look at it. It doesn't need poking, prodding, helping in any way. It's just there. And Bradford Dale, we've got the river. This is a photograph taken. All the photos are on my farm. Somebody put a sign up once that said that we've got water vole. People who'd happily walked along the footpath then went and walked along the edge of the river hoping to see the water vole. I quickly took those signs down. Loose dogs can accidentally separate young from their parents, a dog going through the river there would have sent those ducklings in one direction and the duck in the other, and they would very quickly have perished because it's not always easy for them to relocate. They do but fantastically well. We've got a colony of jackdaws, and the juveniles, when they're fledging, seem to spend an awful lot of time hopping up and down the footpath. The wildlife has its right to be there. We should enjoy it and we should celebrate it. If there's persistent disturbance, then it can cause the abandonment of nests or the abandonment of young. Spot-on dog, flea and tick treatments are poisonous to aquatic life. So you put your flea treatment on your dog and your dog goes in the river, and then the stuff washes off the dog and it will kill the invertebrates in the river. Signage. Signage wants to be informative and a positive message to engage the reader. Nobody likes being told what to do. Don't do this. And straight away people put the back up. So we discuss what you're likely to see. There's a bit of a history of the lead mining and then what to look out for. People will then look out for it while they're walking along rather than looking specifically in a place for it. So again, way markers. I think small roundels are inoffensive. I wouldn't want to see massive amount of signage. Beware of the bull. I used to put signs up in the field where my bull was. I personally would like to know that there was a bull in that field so I could make an informed choice as to whether I walked through that field or not. Putting a sign up is seen as an obstruction to people using that right of way, because you're putting the sign up to say beware of the bull. You're making it then harder for people to use that right of way. So they smash them off, and at £10 a pop I'm not going to put them back up again. So my bull grazes with his herd of cows on footpaths. He's perfectly quiet. The legislation around livestock grazing on footpaths is health and safety executive, so it's a safety thing rather than a rights of way thing. So if I as make an informed choice that my bull is safe on a footpath, then that's perfectly all right for him to be there, because he's a beef bull. If he was a dairy bull, he couldn't be there. I want few signs and the right sign in the right place. Just something just to remind somebody just before they're about to do something that perhaps isn't the right thing. And it needs to be a consistent message. So the branding, the National Park are very, very good at supplying signs with the Peak Park branding on it. So it makes it feel then that you're part of a wider thing rather than it just being you, the farmer, going, get off my land. I think that's it. We're going to end with the Countryside Code because I think it deals with all of it, and we were promised that this was going to be widely publicised, and I don't think they do enough. So this is just an A5 poster. So it just gives an idea of what you should do and how you should enjoy. We're welcoming, we want people to be there. And far away, people that visit it do the right thing. It's just the odd few that don't. And that's the problem. And then the next bit, Michael, it just shows.
The next bit, the same slide.
Yeah. And then this tells you the waymarks and what they all mean. And I think that this should be everywhere. It should be handed out at schools at the end of each term. Just something, that helps people to do the right thing. Because generally people do want to do the right thing. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlotte. Any questions or comments, Jez? And then Nick and Ben?
Thank you. Yes, I think we've heard the same story in 3 different ways already, and it just strikes me as the big problems is knowledge by the wider population. It's all very well in this room. We're very versed in it, and in fact, when you join the LAF, from whatever group you've come from, hearing the landowners has been something really informative for me. I don't think it's getting to the wider public at all, I have to say. And the Countryside Code, I just made some notes in while you were talking about the Countryside Code, because it's a lost opportunity right now. It starts with respect everyone. Well, straight away you're thinking people, and there's then it moves on, protect the environment, enjoy the outdoors. What it doesn't say is understand the environment that you're in. And if people, you can give as many rules as you like, they don't work unless people know why they're following them. And I don't know how to phrase this as a question really, but somehow, people mentioned Clarkson earlier, he did a huge amount to raise awareness of some of the problems that farmers have. It's that sort of communication cut through, combined with a Countryside Code, and I'd go back and rewrite it again, to bring in understanding as the first of those. I don't know how you can progress that, but what you're saying here, it sounds great to us. If you're living on a council estate in Sheffield and you're never exposed to the countryside, you've no idea. So you come out and you bring your dog and you're clueless. I haven't got a question there, it's just an observation, but you're losing, or landowners in particular, and anybody who cares about the countryside, are losing a perception battle. And there's this campaign for right to roam everywhere, and Rebecca mentioned it in her talk about you've got to balance that against it. We've got to somehow educate the public a lot better, and I don't know if the LAF can help with that. I would also add, though, for access to water for Ben, and he'll remember from the first time he spoke at this LAF, it's one area that does need some work, please. But yeah, we need to work on perception somehow.
Yeah, thank you, Jez. And it's really interesting to see the themes that are coming out of everything that we're talking about. Were you next, Nick?
More or less echoed the same thing, to be honest. I'm sorry to hear about your sheep. Our yard owner keeps 3 or 4 sheep on her land, very, very similar incident with 2 dogs that attacked 3 of the sheep. 1 ended up being destroyed because of it. I feel like there's a particular problem with dog owners, not as a whole, but that seems to be more of an issue in the countryside and responsible access to the countryside. And a question, I guess, out of that is, other than publicising the countryside code and responsible access to the countryside, have you got any ideas about how we can improve that situation? Even in an urban environment, I've lost count the number of times when I used to run. Those flaming extending leads drive me insane. And literally running up by this dog about 400 yards away, cut across in front of me, and I nearly tripped over its path, over its lead. It's just insanely annoying to go, oh, didn't realise that was going to happen. No. What can we do?
Well, Charlotte, can you solve that for us? Either one of you, in fact. Yeah. But yeah, thoughts?
I think it should be that dogs are on leads as the norm, that there should be specific reasons why your dog is not on a lead. I always walk my dogs on leads, and they've all been working breeds, and when they're working, obviously they're off lead, but as soon as they finish doing whatever their particular task is, then they're back and they're on the lead. You know, if you go to a sheepdog trials or anything, all the sheepdogs that are not participating are all there on a lead. You know, but that, I think that would be the easier message, that there has to be a good reason why your dog's not on a lead, rather than you're allowed to have your dog off a lead. I've not found anything anywhere that says this is what facilities we should provide. So yeah, I think that would help.
Thank you. Blair?
We haven't done it at Chatsworth, but I know that up at Bolton Abbey in North Yorkshire, they have designated a kind of dog walking field to help tackle this, because all of their, it's a very different kind of estate, but all of their access is right down by the river and loads of stock and what have you. So they've tried to kind of tackle that, because people come out and they want to exercise their dog, so they will. So they've provided a kind of space where, fenced off space. But I know that, I appreciate that's not possible for kind of on a smaller scale, but it's one way aspect.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I've heard a few with around contract dog walkers as well, sort of managing those on, and in the Sheffield Moors area, there seems there's a big issue with those, and similar discussions around. You can spend a lot of time telling people what not to do, but you also need to give people places where they can do the things they want to do, if that is letting their dog run in specific areas or whatever, maybe. Yeah. Thank you. It was Martin and then John.
Charlotte, thanks very much. Just on the beware of the bull signs, I mean, I don't think it's very extensive, my walking around, but one thing is occasionally they do seem to be left up there almost permanently. One way for stopping them being broken is maybe to have a date when they go up, so people actually know that they're going to be taken down. I mean, that's a sort of, again, back to this education, informative type of thing. So it's a thing. And the second thing is waymarks. I mean, I think Rob Greatrix is going to come back and talk to us in June, and I think that will be an interesting discussion with Rob with waymarks. If I go and put a waymark on your gatepost, that's potentially criminal damage. So I think waymarking is an interesting discussion as to how we waymark. But certainly it would be good to hear what Rob's got to say on that one.
Thank you. John?
I think actually this was down to parenting and education. And I think it's an age thing. Certainly when we were kids and all the rest, there was a different attitude of people to actually parenting children and how you respect the countryside. And I think that's gone. And I think it's got to almost come back to the level of parents as a starting point and spread it from there.
Actually, just thinking about that, John, just actually asking you as a volunteer ranger, whether you kind of, what you might see the role of their role in.
It's a difficult one because again, the rangers that we've got coming along are of a younger age group, and I don't think can start there. And I agree totally with your point. It's sad, but that's the reality of life.
Oh, sorry, Ben, and then Joe, I might ask if you've got anything you wanted to add from a farming perspective as well. Entirely up to you, but if you do.
Thanks, Louise. Charlotte, was it plural? A question for both of you, really. But firstly, just I think a welcome of this discussion. Too often, people accessing the countryside and the custodians of the land of the countryside are pitched upon opposing sides, and it's an adversarial relationship rather than one of let's have a conversation about how we can make this work. So the fact that we can have this conversation is really useful. And I've spent some time in the CLA recently, and we might not agree, but we certainly come closer together every time we talk and understand. So I think it's a really good conversation to have. But linked to actually the CLA and their recently published 6 missions, one of their 6 missions talks about reducing liability on landowners by amending the Occupiers Liability Act. So my question, I guess, is around how does the cost of providing public rights of access affect you as landowners, having a public right that goes through your property? How do you bear that cost? You talked about liability and health and safety, and it's been mentioned a few times today under FIPL, and is that a barrier to people, to landowners being open to providing more access? And is there anything that could be done either nationally or locally to try and ease that burden of liability, insurance, whatever it may be, upon landowners? Does that make sense?
Yes, I don't think it's particularly a barrier to us because we're a big organisation that welcome access, and it kind of is just one of those things we have to deal with, and inevitably there will be claims for falling over on footpaths and steps and that kind of thing. So yes, I'm not sure it's particularly a barrier for us. It just is a management cost, if you like. But I think it perhaps is a barrier for, for smaller scale landowners in having new concession routes or, considering that.
I think the key thing is what sorts of rights of way you've got. Mine are all public rights of way, so a lot of the liability rests with the local authority. And I have just a general insurance which costs me about £40 a month on a 50-acre holding, and that will just cover me for public liability. So that is what the cost is, but I'm not sure what effect it would have on my premium if I then started to have concession routes and things where the liability rests with me. So,
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Joe, is there anything you wanted to add? Equally, Alistair, as a land manager as well, if you've got anything you want to say from the water company perspective. Joe?
Just a conflict between nature and people, really. It's become a 24-hour society out in the countryside now, so nature never gets time to rest. So you've just got to be aware. If you want to see nature and the environment, you're just going to have to give it space as well. And also, biosecurity for straying livestock. If livestock gets mixed between neighbours and you get a disease from it, it can be devastating for a farming business. And then Moreland hasn't been touched on today, but wildfires and camping. Wild camping's all right, but they set off at 4 o'clock in an afternoon, so then they want the camping stove to make the tea. So then you've got a fire. That's the only issue, and the litter that they leave behind.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, and I think there's some interesting questions about certainly that nature and nature people kind of because we want both, that we want access and we want the nature, and we know they're going to be in conflict. And I guess, am I going to get this right? This is the Sandford principle, where the two are in conflict. In the national park, actually, it's nature protection that should dominate, that should prevail, But ideally, we want to try and deliver both at the same time. But that's challenging. It's challenging enough for these big organisations, but for an individual farmer, I guess sort of doubly so. Alistair, sorry to put you on the spot, but I thought as another land manager in the room, and then we move on to Craig and hear from the National Trust as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just echo everything that's been said, really, from both Charlotte Squared. We're kind of sat in the middle because we have tenants, we have public, we've got an obligation for access and recreation across our land holding under the Water Industry Act. And we've got to walk that balance between the two. At the same time, we're cursed with inappropriate behaviour, like every landowner is, really. COVID was particularly bad, as everybody knows. It's probably slightly improved since then. But I'm finding it increasingly frustrating that we are, as landowners, there's more onus put on us by authorities that should be policing things. And yeah, oh, well, we can't do anything about it. We haven't got the resource. What are you going to do about it? It's like, hang on a minute. Some of this is criminal activity. There's nothing we can do about it. And we get that quite a lot. I'm finding that more frustrating. And that's a resource thing across the board. We've had incidents of livestock worrying and harassment at the week just gone at Langsett. So the police are, we've got quite a proactive policing team up there, but you've got to be on site 24/7, which just isn't feasible, is it, or practicable. Off-roading, particularly motorbikes, that seems to be increasing in that particular area as well. And a lot of people enjoying the place quite happily and not leaving any problems for us, occasional litter. Professional dog walking is a big problem. I use professional in the broadest sense of the term. But, we've got certain sites, and it frustrates the life out of me that they're making money and leaving us with all the issues to tidy up after them. And we won't be on our own in that respect. So really, just more of the same, really, unfortunately. And no easy answers, I don't think, to any of it. But the parenting is a big thing. My kids get fed up of me talking to them about it, but they get it from me, from 2 barrels sometimes, and that's just how it should be. But it isn't seen, but that's a problem across society in general, isn't it? So there's no easy answers to any of it, unfortunately.
It's the same with education again. It all comes down to how they start off.
Yeah, but that understanding of why these things are being asked is a massive. And our ranger team, where we've now got a personal presence out on site, trying to engage with the visitors, which we've never had before, and that meets mixed responses. Vast majority of people, brilliant, great, but there's all, particularly summertime, swimming, barbecues, camping, antisocial behaviour. It's that difficult one. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think with all these things, there's no silver bullet. It's going to be lots and lots of different solutions. They're going to get to different people at different times, aren't they? But as you say, that resourcing challenge, how do we do that kind of with the range of resources and partners that we have? Craig, it would be great to hear a bit about the National Trust if that's okay. That would be fantastic. And then we'll move on to the formal business with Sue and Jill.
Yeah, so this is a bit of an add-on. I forgot to send through my slides until this morning, so I think you assumed I wasn't going to say anything, didn't you? So, but never mind. But yeah, I've got a little Jack Russell Patterdale, or a Patterdale Jack Russell, so he's always on the lead, because anything that moves he just wants to eat. So I'm convinced when he looks in the mirror every morning he sees a lion. So there you are. So, but yeah, no, the dog issue is a big problem. And actually at Island Park someone mentioned like a dog run. I think it was yourself, Charlotte. We're looking at that. And interestingly, I've been at Dovedale and interacting with people. I like to get out and about and talk to people, and I've come across someone with 4 dogs, and I've asked them to put them on the leads, and they don't have any leads. They didn't even come with any, so it's remarkable, really. It is. So I don't know how you begin to address situations like that. So fortunately, I'm not going to talk much about some of the negativities. I think that's been covered reasonably well. So, and I'm sure you can imagine, you know, National Trust, we operate a visitor business. In fact, our funding derives from visitors. So if you can think about membership, you've got, you know, about 5.7 million members. And for some people, it is about cause. That's why they pay their membership. But for a lot of people, it's a pass, isn't it, to go and go out somewhere for the day, take the family, and it's good value for money as well. So I'll see you at the door at the end of the session. So and we also generate a lot of income from our visitor business, whether that be car parks. In fact, car parks in the Peak District, I get about £1 million every year, but I can use that money to invest in public access, in managing and improving the condition of our buildings, working with our tenant farmers. Put a lot of money into our tenant farmers at the moment to make their business sustainable, to support them with some of those decisions going forward. So I kind of don't want to apologise for the visitor side of stuff, because I think it's really valuable. And you know, there's places like, interestingly, Dovedale, we don't actually promote Dovedale, we just don't need to. It promotes itself. We don't need to put any money into communications and marketing. So in fact, if we promoted Dovedale, people would just be disappointed to turn up and they'd have to go home because there's nowhere to park. So yeah, and Mam Tor, interestingly, we reckon Mam Tor gets about 500,000 visitors every year. So we've installed some people counters now, so we begin to evidence that. Because I work in a big cohort with general managers in the National Trust, and those general managers with the mansion properties, you know, they can, you know, they have pay for entry points, so they're really good at evidencing their visitor numbers, where countryside places it's a bit wishy-washy. So the, you know, I'm really clear, you know, we get over 1 million visitors across our land in the Peak District easily. So and we're beginning to evidence that, and I'm hoping the National Trust organisationally will sort of change our finance systems to reflect that, because it costs money to manage people in a big audience. So yeah, so I'm actually on holiday this week, so believe it or not, I've got this weird job where most days it feels like I'm never at work, so I'm getting my garden done. So the reason I'm telling you that, I can't bloody remember the slides, so as each slide appears, I'm going to have to look at it and remember it. So, but I purposely kept, because I always remember when I met you, you were really clear, make sure you turn up to every meeting. You remember that?
I do. Well, it's a treat, isn't it?
Yeah. So, it has, I'm on holiday. But I'm getting a free lunch, so I'm happy with that. So yeah, so we have issues with litter. I mean, that's an image of Dovedale. I mean, I don't know where you start with litter. I kind of feel we're not in a position to influence that too much. I think if you come with that mindset that you're just going to come with all your heavy gear and leave your packaging, I don't know how you begin to address that. You know, we put the signs up, but actually what's being touched on is that presence, and I think that's helpful, but talking to people in a positive way, not challenge them. It feels like you should, you feel obligated to go, oh, don't you? But actually, usually just get a negative response. I think you just got to be realistic, and you're not going to solve it all, but you can reduce those number of incidents to a more manageable level over a period of time. That'll be helpful. Barbecues and such things. And there's some stuff on, and this has been touched already. You know, clear signage, marked routes, so people don't wander off paths and end up in predicaments. We'll skip to the next one. Our approach in the Peak District is, you know, we're looking at renaturalising rivers. You know, we want our landscapes to be resilient for climate change. We're looking at improving the condition of our grasslands. We're investing millions in peat restoration and millions in woodland creation. But the most important one, that should be at the top, is we're working really closely with our tenants. And recently we secured the Landscape Recovery Grant, about £1 million to work with our tenants to look at how we can make those businesses sustainable from an ecological perspective, but also financially resilient as well. And I think that's really important. And, you know, as much as I have a team of rangers, you know, I feel as if we're working in partnership with a team of tenants who are ultimately managing land. And we are challenging our tenants as well, you know. With that support comes that ask to change. But actually, I think our tenant farmers, not all of them, but a lot of them do need to change because, you know, the world is a different place. Next one, please. So yeah, so we did a bit of audience research into Dovedale. So Dovedale's really interesting. It's a really diverse audience, really different to other National Trust places. You know, if you want me to be really honest, a lot of our National Trust places are quite white middle class, you know, where actually there's a real opportunity to engage with an audience who don't normally visit National Trust places. So we obviously want to change that. We're going to grow our members. We need to be welcoming to everyone, don't we? So of any background. So we've done quite a bit of work in a bit of research, and to be honest, it's all really obvious, you know, the stuff that's come back. What I find really interesting is people are travelling an hour, 2 hours to visit Dovedale. So from as far as we're in London, it's not unheard of for a family to come to Dovedale for the day, you know. So it's really interesting. If you've got a dog, you've come to let it have a walk, haven't you? So they are going to let it run off. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but it does happen, you know. So and if you come to Dovedale and you've got a cool box full of raw meat, doesn't matter what anyone says to you, you're going to cook it, aren't you? Because that's your dinner. So I'm not saying we've made any decisions on it, but is the scope for providing facilities in the future at Dovedale? Because at the end of the day, you know, I'm going to be really honest, as an organisation, we're not managing it well. You know, I haven't got staff there into the evening, every evening. It's happening, irrespective of whether we want it to happen. So, and I do worry, you know, I did have staff going up with a watering can and putting barbecues out. And I remember this was about 2.5 years ago when I started this role. I says, you need to stop that because one of you is going to be punched. You know, and you know, you're going to feel, you might have a physical injury or you might feel uncomfortable talking to people again in that situation. So, and then the other thing, we were pushing the barbecuers out into higher ground or in quieter areas where actually the risk of fire was greater and where we were pushing them to where there were where people were barbecuing. So I think we need a pragmatic approach to it. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm not going to open a debate on that one. But I want you to think about it. So one thing we are doing, so Dovedale is, we call it an outdoor hub in the National Trust. It's a bit of a honeypot, it's where lots of people come. So we want to improve the infrastructure so people can get a good quality cup of coffee, you know, something to eat, good toilet facilities, improving access. In fact, Dovedale, Ilam and Longshore, especially Ilam and Longshore, because of the natural topography, it's a bit more easier for people. We want to be, you know, some of the most accessible places in the Peak District. That's our vision, and we'll achieve that over, you know, the next few years. We're not going to do it all overnight. Next one. Ireland, similarly, lots of walks. We're looking at how we improve that work with our tenant farmer as well, to look at either permissive routes or new routes. And obviously we need to think about the interactions of people and livestock. So we need to consider that and make sure we resource the infrastructure correctly. And then Mam Tor, again, I mentioned before, 500,000 people easily visit that place, but it's a really important hill fort as well. And there's a lot of erosion and damage, so we need to invest a lot of money in these places because people are going to come irrespective if we want people to come or not. And I work for an organisation that embraces visitors. We embrace people in the outdoors because that's kind of one of our core purposes. In fact, our next strategy period into the next 10 years is very much about people in the outdoors. Yes, that brings a lot of challenges, and I'm not going to pretend I've got all the answers, but it's something we need to start thinking about how we manage. So interestingly, Dovedale, Island Park in Mam Tor as well, we're hoping to be successful for a Heritage Lottery bid. There's I forget what it's called, but there's like a new landscape sort of restoration fund that's coming online, up to 12 million, I think it is. So we'll obviously go in for the full amount. But these places, whether it be Thorpe Cloud at Dovedale, whether it be Isleham, you know, level access into the gardens, you know, Thorpe Cloud has lots of erosion, you know, from footpaths. Similarly, the archaeology, the heritage has been impacted by people. That investment takes millions. I'm shocked at the price of stuff these days when it comes to footpaths or whatever it is. So yeah, so I'm not going to go through all this because I promised to be super quick because I think the agenda's quite squashed towards the end. But I just wanted to give everyone a bit of a sense of the National Trust's approach. Yeah, you know, the visitor business is important to us. We get that. We understand there are people living and working in the countryside, so we need to support them and understand how we balance that access and, you know, in the more traditional use of the land as well. So. But yeah, that's pretty much me done, and then I'm open for questions.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, completely not by design, but by accident, that was an amazing kind of one to end on. I think we kind of nice journey through kind of the issues and the challenges. But yeah, any questions for Craig, or any kind of comments on what you've heard?
Must be something on water.
The only thing. The only thing I would say is I just thought what you said around, or you talked on it with the barbecues, but that willingness to be open-minded, to look at the reality of how people use the outdoors, is so refreshing that we're not having to go back. Well, this is how it's always been, or this is what the countryside should be like. Actually, people are using the countryside in a different way. People from different backgrounds do come to the park and want to do different things. And instead of trying to stop them doing it or push them somewhere else or put signs up to say, stop, go somewhere else, recognising, I think you used the word, Charlotte, you can't blame people. You used it 2 or 3 times. You can't blame people. So why don't we look at, I mean, I'm talking in the context of water here. Look at the fact that people want to go swimming, want to go paddling, people want to have barbecues. How do we solve those problems pragmatically rather than trying to stop them or move them somewhere else? And I think that was a really refreshing comment that you made.
Just on so we've got the River Dove runs through Dovedale, and yeah, lots of people use that river, and you know, and I'm going to be honest, I've had lots of interactions with conversations with my broader staff team, who really struggle with that aspect, but I've remind them that actually between the car park and the stepping stones is quite a narrow section. The National Nature Reserve extends for several miles up the Clough. It's a big old National Nature Reserve. So actually the people impact is relatively small if you look at it on a map. So I just think we need to put these things in perspective sometime. And I've spoken with the fishermen as well, and there's still plenty of fish in that stretch. They just get there early before everyone, while everyone's still in bed, don't they? So.
Thank you. Charlotte?
I think it's, of all the presentations, I think it's shown how much the money is important in this, in that the National Trust, they are a visitor organisation, and they have the funds to support the visitors. As a farmer, I'm producing food, so visitors are an add-on. They're not part of my core business, and I think that Chatsworth have the balance between the two, in that they're part of their core business is farming, is forestry, but then also they've got the visitors, and it's just looking at where the funding goes. And I think that government funding for access needs, if access is required, it should be reflected across the funding stream. And I think some of the ideas on landscape-wide partnerships, me and my 50 acres, you know, I'm not looking to expand my access, but I could work with other farmers around, and we could then have a bigger area. The National Trust support their tenants. It's looking at that support for other farmers and bringing us together, and there is that work to be done on that, I think.
Yeah, you hear about farmer clusters, particularly around farmers working on nature, but yeah, farmer clusters looking at access on that kind of landscape scale. Yeah, Yeah, Craig.
Yeah, just really briefly. So, yeah, when I first started this job, I went around all of the High Peak tenants and I was really honest with them. And I said, we want to support your businesses, but with that will come some challenge. Challenge in that for the National Trust, you know, there's 3 priorities for our land. One is nature and carbon. And we're not forgetting about farming, because farming done in the right way can produce the nature and carbon. So in fact, the nature and carbon requires farming, but if the farming method isn't the correct one, then the first 2 decline a little bit. And what we also said is we will work with you to access the best or the biggest government grants to make things stack up, you know, and I'm hopeful of the Landscape Recovery Scheme putting us in a strong position. And I'm also really keen to look at a similar LRS scheme for the White Peak as well. We've got a lot of land. It'd be interesting to have a conversation with Chatsworth as well, and also the Peak Park, and it's something I've spoken briefly with Rodri. But when I speak with tenants on a one-to-one basis, and we're going through what's called a whole farm plan, where we look at all the ecological assets, we look at the business and such things. What we're discovering is the actual farming bit of the income is quite small. It isn't sustainable. And that's a tough gig for a tenant or a farmer who prides themselves over producing food to hear. But they know that, you know, deep down. And when you're on a one-to-one basis, it comes out. Actually, the income potential for a tenant overwhelmingly is payments for environmental outcomes and potentially diversification. Now, there are some tenants who don't have those opportunities for diversification, but there are some available. And I agree, it'd be good to see access resource being put into landscape recovery schemes and future ones, a bit more than it is. But there is quite a bit of money through countryside stewardship or the future landscape recovery for nature-based farming, whether that be something like wood pasture, for example. It can be quite lucrative. And actually what we're discovering with our tenants is by putting woodland on site, actually the revenue payments for woodlands quite worthwhile. So it's seen as an economic asset. Sorry, I'm getting off piece a little bit, but
one, and then I need to move on to Sue and get to the formal bit. Martin.
Very briefly, Craig, I mean, you mentioned litter. One thing is just having sustainable flasks. Why people are still buying water bottles, I don't know. I mean, it's but supporting that, I mentioned soft infrastructure already, some storage for cycle things, more water fountains. It's right selling these, but if there's nowhere to fill the things up, so again, it's come like trying to help people do the right thing.
Do the right thing. Yeah. That's a great note to end on, actually, Martin. Thank you. I think, I mean, for me, I found that a really fascinating discussion, and it's actually the strength of the LAF that we've got these different kinds of land managers and people with different perspectives, as well as those of us from a more kind of recreational and access side who are then seeing the kind of challenges of how people want to access and being able to do the right thing. There's a very interesting theme there as well about what farmers and landowners are rewarded for in financial terms and how those subsidies work. And I sometimes think access becomes the poor cousin of all of the others, and actually it'd be really good to see something like the way that Rebecca's been able to use FIPL, but being able to use some of that money to trial things and do more interesting things around providing positive, you know, saying, well, people are going to do it. So do we trial barbecue areas? Do we trial areas for commercial dog walkers? Can we do some really innovative things about how we tackle some of these challenges? But I just want to thank all the land managers in the room for your feedback and input. That's been really fascinating, and everyone for all of your questions. Thank you. And this is definitely something we'll come back to. It's not the end of the conversation, is it? If anyone's got good examples to bring to future meetings, we definitely want more of that. So, Sue, shall we talk about directions for land? Yeah.
We can talk about directions on land, and actually this is the fourth time that I've brought the review of long-term directions to the Local Access Forum. This is because we're now coming up to the 20th year for the introduction of open access land, and for long-term directions These were issued back at the time of when the new rights came into being, and these are balancing landowner needs and access requirements. Works on the basis of least restrictive principle. Bit more onerous than the access management that the National Park looks to support landowners and visitors on site, mainly because the 3 consultations that I'm bringing to you today all involve shooting. So Appendix 2 summarises all the reviews that the Local Access Forum will be looking at, but at this meeting we have 3 sites, 2 of them right in the northern part of the park, and I think that's Appendix 2 lists these sites. So Deer Hill and Diggle right in the northern part of the National Park, and West Nab just in the northeastern part of the National Park as well. And I have also tabled detailed maps showing the extent of the directions. This is a statutory responsibility that national parks have for dealing with long-term directions. The consultation starts today. It's a 6-week consultation, so the end date is the 5th of April. And the Local Access Forum, a statutory consultee for dealing with these directions. Quick summary, as I've said, rifle ranges for 2 of the sites, Deer Hill and Diggle. There's been detailed discussions over the since 2009 when we undertook the first review, looking at the need for the direction, looking at the and the extent and nature of the direction. In these cases, we considered that because of the ad hoc nature of shooting at the site, where members could turn up on site and shoot with minimum notice, and effectively on 365 days of a year, that it hasn't been appropriate to install an outline direction, hence the exclusion. However, having said that, at Deer Hill on previous reviews, we've provided for modification of the boundary to allow climbing to take place on part of the crag, and there is also an arrangement with the shooting club where members of the BMC can climb at other times. At Diggle, again, there was a rejigging and repositioning of the actual rifle ranges in discussion with ourselves, prompted by the review, which has reduced the overall extent of the direction and allows for continuity of access around the site, so that people can get to places where they want to go. And as you can see on the West Nab site, again, we've included a conditional linear access. So although there's a restriction on the area of access, there is a linear access that connects the areas of access land with the road, to prevent to allow that access. The consultations are with the Local Access Forum. I'll be happy to take any questions raised at the meeting. The Local Access Forum has until the 5th of April in which to provide any comments, any views reported at the meeting. I will pursue with the landowners and the applicants when we next meet. Thank you.
Does anyone have any specific comments or questions on these now, Martin and John?
are they required to fly red flags, as they would say down at back of Thorpe, for instance, when they're shooting? Because normally down there you get the red flags, you know that the rifle range is operative. There's no red flags there. We tend to wander over it.
There is a requirement to fly warning flags when shooting is taking place. The reason why we haven't included an outline direction which refers to red flags flying is the fact that there are some areas of the site, because of the topography, where you wouldn't see the red flags.
Thank you. Martin?
Just on the Deer Hill one, so there's rights of way which go into the western side of the area. Presumably, we're okay to walk the rights of way. So if it's okay to walk the rights of way, why is it not okay to go into the rest of the access land? And just remind me, I think we're allowed to shoot over a right of way, aren't we?
Your first question in relation to rights of way, yes, there are rights of way through the rifle range, and if anyone chooses to walk the public right of way, so follow that line of the path, then the shooting stops immediately. That part of the rifle range is flat and can be easily seen. You're walking straight way through where the shooting takes place, so it's easy to observe visitors using the public right-of-way. Elsewhere on that land, the sight lines are not as clear. So that's the distinction between access land and public rights-of-way. In terms of shooting over a public right-of-way, whilst there may be rights, the rifle, the National Rifle Association and the club would stop shooting if anyone walks along the public right of way. There is also access land around the site, and in actual fact it's an excellent route which follows the top of the conduit walking around the site, so the vast majority of users do follow that line.
Jess?
Yeah, again, the Deer Hill one, I mean, it is really frustrating because, first of all, the rifle range is at the bottom of a cliff. I mean, I don't know how often a bullet lands on that danger area, but probably not in the last 10 years, to be honest, because you'd have to be more than incompetent to shoot over the top of the cliff. So for the climbers, I can see it being a problem, but are they really sure it needs to be protected in the way it is? And if they really are sure it does need to be, because it feels like it'd be more dangerous you'd be more danger of being hit by lightning. Can they not sort of monitor it? Because I mean, the number of times that somebody wants to walk on there that intersects with somebody shooting at what doesn't seem to be a very heavily used range must be already very rare. Just feels like it's a big restriction for absolutely minimal risk improvement.
Okay, we've had very detailed discussions on that very point in relation to the fall of shot zone. How it's calculated is based on a plan. So it doesn't have regard to topography. And that's a requirement of the insurance and all club requirements. The rifle range is used by all the local police forces for shooting. It's also a high velocity range, and again the insurance works on the basis that although someone may be aiming at a target, if there were problems, misfires that could go up into the air because they're high velocity, then there could be some risk.
But you could be stood in any shooting range and fire in the wrong direction, and a bullet could land on somebody because it would go up and down. It could come down 5 miles away. I mean, we don't have that requirement, or it doesn't seem like that requirement exists around all shooting ranges. Just not taking account of the topology is a serious sort of miscalculation, I would have thought. Might be the rules, but it doesn't make it sensible.
Yeah, it's really for the the Rifle Association and the requirements in order for shooting to take place, for them to identify what the risks are. So the position of the authority, we can ask about how the fall of shot zones are calculated. We can confirm, as we have done in the past, and which has resulted in modifications in 2009 and 2010, and I think again in 2014, where the fall of shot lines were reduced and modified, and that made it easier for connectivity for people within the access land. But it's really for such organisations to identify what they need to do to meet their requirements, and for ourselves as the National Park Authority to balance the land manager owner requirements with access requirements, which perhaps gets us back a little to some extent with some of the earlier discussions about balancing access with land management requirements. With this one, it's land management is part of it, but it's also the directions are also made on the grounds of public safety. So there are opportunities for access around the area, and we've also led guided events across the top of Shooters Nab with club members who have been happy to lead guided walks, and we've done that with local ramblers clubs in the past, and that programme of walks. Then I'm happy to raise again with the club to see if we can continue with that.
Okay. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, all of you. I think what we'll do is we'll draft a response based on the conversation. We'll handle this the same as we've handled the Moscow and the Swan and Lima Rakes, which is we'll put a letter together and circulate, and the purpose of that letter is to kind of reflect the views of kind of everybody. So we'll circulate it round, and then if everyone can put comments in, if you've got strong feelings, or even if you haven't, it is useful to know if you don't have strong feelings as well, because at least I know you've seen it. And then we'll put something together. But yeah, thanks, Jess. I think as you kind of you're saying, we want to make sure we preserve as much access as possible and make it as sensible as we can.
There are a lot worse places than that one. Just carved out in stone.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for that. So one more, go on, and then we'll go to the bill.
To be very brief, we've been talking about access land, and we've been talking about ways that we can support access. I thought, again, you'd like to see this. It certainly stands out. This is this year's thank you certificate for the Access Fund. The Access Fund is coming up to its 10th year this year. We've got a great collection of certificates, but what I've also left in the corner for you, we've been having an office clear out, and there's a number of books in the corner, just in front of where Karen is. If anyone would like to pick up any of those books and make a donation to the Access Fund of any amount, then that would be great. Some of the books there are about the northern parts of the national park. There isn't anything about Shooters Nab, Jez, but other areas near there. And then finally, as a lunchtime event, we've got our cultural heritage volunteers speaking to our local access forum volunteers about some digital imaging work that's been taking place at Thors. It has many applications, but one of the things we've been looking at Thors Cave is about changing access on that area, and again linking in with the access improvements funded by FIPL. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, that over lunchtime, looking at what's happening at Thors Cave, that would be really interesting. Jill, Derbyshire.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Sue, for circulating my report. I'll just go and pick out a few headlines, because you've all obviously had chance or will have chance to read it. Looking at the repairs to the paths, particularly the ones that the LAF's been interested in, There hasn't been an awful lot of progress over the last few months because there's a lot of priority being given to repairs on Derbyshire roads, which I'm sure a lot of people will be very thankful for. But our works teams and private contractors are out repairing potholes and all sorts of things at the moment. So I think we'll have Rob back hopefully at the June meeting.
Yes, yeah.
So perhaps if we have a subgroup meeting in May, for anybody that wants to come along to it and just talk about the individual routes and that sort of thing ahead of the June meeting.
So as a reminder, for those of you who don't know, last year we had a meeting with Rob Greatorex and Steve Hollingworth, talking up to look at that maintenance programme and particularly to provide advice from LAF members on prioritisation and on the nature of repairs to these kind of priority routes. What I'll do is, I guess, everyone who was there last time I will contact, but also if anybody else wants to be involved in that, then let me know. But we will let everybody, it will be online, so it'll be a Teams meeting. We'll let everyone know the date. Everyone will get the papers, at least the ones that can be circulated outside the meeting, and then everyone is welcome to join that, and we provide that guidance to Rob, and then he will also come to the June meeting to talk about that maintenance programme.
And then if there's anyone to particularly go out and have a look at as a site visit.
We'll do site visit.
Because I don't think we ever looked at the Yule Grove Bridleway, did we, in the end? So there's a few there that we might want to go and have a look at. Equally with unrecorded ways, it's probably time we had another get-together to have a look at that, because the applications are still coming in, the volunteers are still beavering away, researching those. And then under aim 3, I've just put in a bit of an update on the Pennine Bridleway. We're quite actively progressing two of the alternatives now to avoid the Dinting Viaduct and also to get off Woolly Bridge Road and the River Edrow section. So we've got quite a lot of work underway on those. White Peak Loop, and I've made a note probably to speak to Rebecca about the FIPL scheme at Woodale, because that's our preferred route option coming off the end of the Monsell Trail and heading into Buxton. So we've got money from Active Travel England there, topped up by our own to progress that preferred route and start looking at detailed design and getting stuff ready for planning applications, etc. We've got some improvements underway in Buxton across Temple Fields, which is notoriously muddy for anybody who knows it. That is also on the preferred route of the White Peak Loop, but also provides quite a good local connection. I walked it the other day and glad I wore my wellies. So that will make a big improvement because it's a route that kids can use to get to school and all sorts of things. So that's underway. We had a meeting to look at the old road. Those works are due to get underway in early March to improve that really awful section. So we've had input from the horse riders from Whitehall, the outdoor centre. So hopefully that scheme should take on everybody's views, but also provide a route that people can use, because it's quite ankle twisting at the moment. So is what say?
Were we at that meeting, the National Park?
No, but you've been consulted on it. So that should be, say, getting underway early March for about 8 to 12 weeks. There'll be a temporary closure in force while it happens. Then I just talked a bit about the investment that we've got for rights of way and for our greenways or the Derbyshire Cycle Network, which is quite a healthy 2 million. A new area of work, and I won't even try to explain it today, but I'll put you a bit of background in there about these active travel master plans that we're doing. So in terms of our network, we've got the key cycle network, and it does include everybody, which is the strategic routes. We've got the more local connections, and then we've got what happens within the towns themselves. So there's a pilot study underway for Belper, Glossop and Ilkeston. So if there's anything to report on, I've just tried to explain what it is in there, but if there's anything to report specifically for Glossop and the connections there, we'll bring that back at a later date. A couple of things I've picked up on: the County Council's duties to prepare the local nature recovery strategy, which is obviously something that's underway and has to be done in collaboration. So it'll involve the National Park. There must be a role for the LAF in there somewhere. And then, just a little bit about Walk Derbyshire and the improvements to the website. And again, ongoing input from volunteers on improving our paths and trails. So if anyone's got any questions, quite happy to try and answer them.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Another comprehensive report. Thank you very much. Any question? I know Martin wanted to add something. Anything from anyone else? And then Nick. Martin.
Jill, thank you very much. Just working backwards, the local nature recovery strategy, I attended the meeting in January at County Hall. Very interesting. I think the proposal to start off, it's an initial one. The time frame is very tight to get the strategy done. All local authorities have got to produce it. I think they were looking at dividing Derbyshire into what they call characteristic areas on landscape. So I found this it's really interesting. We had some really good speakers as well. Again, certainly to a couple of them referred to the State of Nature report and how we are one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. And the scale of what we have to do is just enormous. So that was just the initial meeting, and we'll be having further meetings on for that one. The Green Initiatives, Green Towns Initiative, I was walking with somebody yesterday who lives in Buxton at Harper Hill, and they were just really just going on about sort of the speed of traffic going through. I find the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit quite a backward step. You think about Wales has put in a national system right across Spain, put in a national system in 2019. I drove out from Birmingham on the A441 for about sort of 25 minutes on a 20-mile-an-hour all the way through. And I would say speed limits is largely what I find for a lot of friends when I drive with, it's a bit like dog owners, really. My dog never changes a sheep, and I was only doing 36 mile an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour limit. Last thing, on a more positive thing, roadside signposting, absolutely great. £46 million deficit for Derbyshire County Council. It's a statutory duty, but as we know, there's no time limit. I just think this is commendable for Derbyshire County Council to be continuing with this because it's so vital to get people starting. And I was wondering whether it would be worth a letter, say, going to the Cabinet member, Caroline Rennick, just to sort of say thanks very much for keeping it going and helping people get out and access our wonderful countryside.
It's one that comes with the highways, so it would probably Councillor Cupit, who is the Cabinet member for the highways team. So, well, both, it would be good to make both of them aware of it. So,
yeah,
because it's, you know, we want to do signage on our trails as well, so to help people. But yeah, perhaps one to both. Let's sort of they cover both those areas between them.
Yeah, is everyone happy with that? We'll put something together for Derbyshire to.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank them for that. And you said you were happy to draft that letter, didn't you, Martin? Well volunteered.
Superb.
Thank you. Any other comments on Sue's report? We'll be coming back. We will be coming back to the maintenance programme in the next meeting. But sorry, Nick, you did.
Yeah, just couple of quick comments really. I'd like to pass on Speed Bridleways thanks to DCC for looking at the route, especially the one north of the railway line, and they suggested it looks very, very pleased that it appears to be a positive survey of that route. Also, the route alongside the Etherrow from Woolleybridge Road to New Road is an extension to an active travel route proposed by Move More Glossop that is forming part of, or appears to be forming quite a bit of the basis of the active travel plan for Glossop as well. So all local groups are involved in that are very pleased with the possibility that it might actually come to something. It would, especially that section along the Etherrow would bypass a very unpleasant section of national trail round through Hadfield. So yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on Jill's report? No. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm just going to go for another 5 minutes, if that's okay with everyone, just so we can do just a couple of final members' reports before we close the meeting. I'm going to go first, and then I'll hand over to Martin and Charlotte. So the first is just a bit of formal business. We put in responses to Sheffield Council's consultation on the TRO for Moscow Cross Road, and then also Staffordshire's TRO for Swan and Lima Rakes. Formally for that, we need to minute in the full LAF meeting that we're happy, even though those responses have gone in, but that the LAF kind of formally ratifies those responses. I guess I'm going to go by. Is anybody not happy for the LAF to ratify either of those two responses? Okay, if formally that's okay with the officers, then I'll take that as assent that as the LAF we've ratified those two responses, and we'll do the same at the next meeting with the response that we're going to put in around the access land closures that Sue's just talked about as well. So, is that okay, Sue? Brilliant, thank you very much. And thanks to everybody who put the responses in for those. It's when we have to do these things between meetings, doing them by email is really good, and actually people have been really responsive. And like I said before, it's even helpful for me just to have a response saying, I've got no idea about this area and I've got nothing to say, but at least then I know you've kind of engaged with that, and all comments are useful. And the Swan and Lima one, when we had so many different views, although it was challenging to put the response together, that's exactly the kind of thing that we should be doing as a LAF, is kind of bringing those views together. So thank you for that. Martin, we did a site visit for Oak Hill.
Yeah, we had a visit to Oak Hill Farm just after our last meeting in November. Really interesting. Sheffield and Rotherham Wildlife Trust. They're looking at a working farm rather than a reserve, so it's like a new venture for them, really, to have a look and see where they're going. They're not looking it's not really focused for school parties or large numbers of the general public. So the focus is on the farm. They're looking to demonstrate nature and climate-friendly farming practices on working farms, and that's certainly something I've been seeing, looking at the sort of situation now and then, if we get invited back in a year or 5 years' time. They had a target. They had to. They were hoping to buy it, so it's 1.2 million. They got donations. Originally, it was bought by SME Fairburn Foundation, who I think buy things on a temporary basis to then allow the organisation to buy it, and they were successful in getting that. So they've taken full ownership early this year. No plans to create any access routes. There is considerable access land on the farm. A boat also goes through it. They are considering looking at new access points and improving access. Thoroughly good morning, really interesting, and just it's just part of the site visits and the and like these meetings, I mean, huge amount of expertise and knowledge, really useful.
Yeah, that was a good visit, and that was joint with Sheffield LAF, so it was good to meet them as well. Yeah, yes, Richard was. Richard is now also on the Sheffield LAF, if I'm right. So if ever you want to bring something back from that meeting, that's always useful to have Richard. And Charlotte.
Yes, just a quick update on the pack horse routes. I made a presentation on those, and we have submitted an application to the Heritage Lottery Fund, and we were unsuccessful. But we were unsuccessful not because they didn't like the project, it was just the process that we'd got wrong. So the Heritage Lottery are working with us on that, and we're getting more advice from the British Horse Society. So I'll just keep you updated as things progress.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And Mike has reminded me, actually, on Moscow Cross Road, the order was approved. So as far as I know, they went ahead with the seasonal TRO to exclude 4x4s, but not to exclude motorbikes. And they also, I think, took sort of our feedback and feedback from others, and that they will monitor that annually, and that, which was also something that had been agreed in previous site visits. So they'll look at the impacts, and if it looks like that's not having enough of an impact, then potentially the TRO will either become all year, or they'll also exclude motorbikes, or it will be reviewed on an annual basis. So that's, on Moscow Cross. So that's that. So the final piece of business is, so the next, at the mine and Charlotte and Martin's terms as chair and vice chair come to an end in March, which is when the meeting should have been, but since we've changed, it's kind of between meetings. So the elections for those posts will now be held at the June meeting. I, for a number of reasons, am not going to put my name forward to be chair for another 2 years, although I have absolutely loved being chair for the last 2 years and very much enjoyed it, and sort of not overseeing, facilitating all these kind of meetings and putting the agendas together. So I will still be involved, obviously, in putting the agendas together for the next meeting, and I'm also happy if the group is happy to. So what we've often done is the chair is elected and then they take over at that meeting. But if the next person who wants to do it would prefer to wait until the next meeting, then I could continue and chair the June meeting, since I will have helped to put it together anyway. But that's something that we can talk about as a kind of group with the secretary and things. So if anybody is interested in standing as chair, I'm very happy to talk to them about it. It's a very interesting role. And, you know, you can do it for as long as you want to, but if somebody wants to do it for 2 years like I've done, it's, yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Okay. And the meeting's on the 12th of June. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, wonderful. Lunch and Thor's Cave, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise, that was excellent.